Today we are talking about what we use for internet while living on the road full time in our fifth wheel camper. And we'll let you know why our Starlink pretty much stays stored up in the loft at all times. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Hummel's Home Roams, where my family and I are traveling full time across the country in our fifth wheel camper. Hi, honey. And in order to share those adventures with you, I need reliable internet. So today, that's what we're getting into. Alrighty guys, so in order to make this all work, my wife and I work completely remotely. We don't have normal 9-to-5 jobs, and because of that, we need very reliable internet. My wife works for a company, but she's able to work completely remotely, but she has to have access to an internet phone as well as internet on a computer while she's working. I am a freelance photographer. I also do content creation and run this YouTube channel along with another one. Have to have internet to make money. That's what it comes down to. So for that to work, we have decided that more than one source is best. Your regular campground Wi-Fi internet is never reliable. Wi-Fi hotspot usually does not work that great, and it's optimal to have two sources at least, just in case there's an outage with one. You can switch over to the other one. So we're gonna go over the two we use. So the first one we use is Starlink. Now I know I just said in the intro that our Starlink pretty much stays stored away for now, but that might change in the months to come, and we'll get into why. But let's start with Starlink, and then we'll go into what we have been mainly using that has just been fantastic. Okay, so Starlink. So Starlink is satellite internet. So it comes with a dish thing that you put outside your camper that connects to a satellite in the sky, and you run a cord from that into your camper where there's a router / modem that plugs into it. Now Starlink is expensive, but I truly do believe it is a must if you are living full-time on the road and need internet. But first off, you gotta buy the gear, which is the satellite dish I just talked about, as well as your modem inside, and none of that has an Ethernet cable hookup. So with my wife's job, she has to have an Ethernet hookup because her phone hooks up into it. So that's another additional cost. But for the gear, we paid like between $500 and $600. So it is no cheap date to get started. And that's not even paying for your service. That's just to get your gear in your possession. And then the service is $150 a month. There's a couple different plans you can use, but the basic one and the one mostly everyone will be using is $150 a month. Now, the good thing about this is you can pause your service. So like I said, we have not been using our Starlink. We have been using mainly our other source. So we have it paused right now and it's stowed away. So with the Starlink, when we first got it, we tested it out and it works great. I've got no complaints about it when it has a clear view of the sky. That is one little downside of it, because if you're camping in a place that's heavily wooded and you have a canopy of trees, it has no clear view of the satellite it needs to connect to. So you will not have internet if there's a canopy of trees over your campsite, which is pretty common in like the northeastern parts where we were camping originally. But there's no limit as far as data goes. It's super fast. We have no problem streaming. It works great. Now we'll get into a few of the cons of it. It is expensive. You're getting really good internet, so it's worth it, but that's definitely not something to be overlooked, because $150 a month is very pricey. And then to originally get into it, like I said, it's like $500 to $600 for the gear, so very expensive. Another thing is it has to be set up. The satellite has to connect to that dish, so you cannot use it while you're traveling. So while you're physically moving in a vehicle, you cannot use it. It pretty much has to be stowed away until you're stopped and you're set up at camp. Then you bring it out and set it up. With that being said, the setup process is a little bit time consuming because you have to put the satellite outside, you plug it in, you gotta run it through your camper, so you gotta find a way to do it. We usually put it through a window, and then that has to connect to the router / modem in order for you to have internet. And once it's all plugged in, it finds the satellite, and it definitely takes a little bit of setup time, so that's something to keep in mind. Being that we live on the road full time in our camper with all of our belongings and everything with us, it's another thing you have to store, and it's quite a bit you have to store. It's pretty cumbersome. It's definitely not portable, I would say, so storing it can be a little bit of a pain. Also, if you need an Ethernet connection, that is an extra add-on part. I don't think it's that expensive. It was like 25 bucks or something, but it is another add-on that you need. Now, as I said, being that it is a satellite internet, you need a clear view of the sky. About a month ago, we stayed up in Old Forge in the Adirondacks. Our site was heavily wooded. There was a giant canopy of trees over us. Now, usually I set it up on the roof of the camper, but even then, the trees were just too tall. There was no way we were getting a connection. I tested it out, and it would not connect the slightest bit. So any obstruction in the sky above you, it pretty much utters itself useless. Now, I think they do sell like a pole in order for you to connect it to your ladder to get it up high enough, but the trees above us were like 75 feet tall. There was no way I was getting it above that. They don't make a pole that big, and even if they did, I would not store it in here to use it for as little as we do. So now let's get into what we have been using, what we're using right now, that pretty much solves all the cons of the Starlink. There is barely any setup to it. It's extremely small to store. We actually use it in our vehicle while we're traveling from destination to destination, and it has performed great that way. And on top of it all, it's only 50 bucks a month. Completely unlimited, very, very fast. So what I'm talking about is T-Mobile Home. Now, I know it's called T-Mobile Home because it's pretty much, made for home, but we have been using it traveling and we've had no issues. I know Verizon makes something similar, and I've heard through the grapevine that if Verizon suspects you're traveling with it, they have shut accounts down. So I don't know what the big deal is, but I have not heard that with the T-Mobile Home. So that's something to keep in mind. But at the time of recording this video, I have not heard anything about that. So the best part about this thing is it's a small little box. It's a little black box, super portable. I don't have it out here right now because my wife's working and it's plugged in there, but I'll put it up on the screen now so you can see. It has two Ethernet cables, ports that are connected right to it, and all it is a plug. You simply plug it into a standard 110 volt receptacle and it powers up and it's good to go. If you got a connection, which we have never had an issue not having a connection so far. You plug it in, wait for it to power up, and it performs flawlessly. We can stream anything. It is completely unlimited data, so you don't have to worry about running out. Now, I haven't done like a head-to-head speed test comparing it with the Starlink, but I have uploaded a video on YouTube with Starlink as well as T-Mobile, and I can say in my experience the T-Mobile uploaded it quicker. Back when we lived at our house, we had residential internet and we had Frontier, which was absolutely terrible. It would take hours upon hours, sometimes even overnight, to upload a YouTube video. It was terrible. If I upload a video now with this T-Mobile, it's under an hour from beginning to end in 4K footage. It's unbelievable. I wish I knew about it when we lived at home too, because we would have just bought it then. It uploads it the fastest I've ever experienced, so that's another huge plus with it. Now, as I said earlier, one huge advantage with this is I have a 110 volt plug in the front of my truck, so we plug it in, I set it up on the dash, and we can use it in the vehicle while traveling. Now, this is a huge plus with young kids. We travel with a 2 and 4 year old, and they use a couple old phones of ours, so we can put on a YouTube video and they can watch it. Now, those old phones do not have mobile data, so it strictly runs off of that T-Mobile. If you have little kids, you know what a nightmare it can be to travel with. Are we there yet? Yeah, sounds familiar. With this, They connect to it. Now, I'm not saying they still don't ask, are we there yet? But it passes the time, and he can watch YouTube videos. Sometimes we even put learning videos on where we can do a little homeschooling on the road as we're traveling, and it works great. That's been a huge plus with it. Hey guys, I just wanted to jump in here real quick. While I'm editing this video, there's another huge plus with the T-Mobile. We just got back from the playground, and there was a little pavilion over by the playground, and they actually had regular outlets in that pavilion. So all we did was plug in that T-Mobile, and we were able to work right there. My wife was able to take calls, work right there. We had internet access, and the playground was right next to it. So the kids were able to play, and we could sit right there. So basically anywhere there's a plug and there's service for T-Mobile, you should be good to go with it. So back to the video. So now you're probably wondering why we even have the Starlink, why we even keep it, why do we let it take up space in the camper? Well, as I said earlier, you want more than one source. If the T-Mobile were to go out, let's say the tower local to this area goes down, my wife still has to work. She can't just, tell her boss, say we're out without internet, I gotta take the day off. So if that were to happen, we could plug the Starlink in quick and boom, that connects to the satellite, we have internet. Now, if that were to happen at a site where we are completely covered with trees and it will not connect to a satellite, then we run into a little bit of an issue. Then we might have to go to, a coffee shop or something and get internet. But the chances of that happening are pretty slim. I don't think both of them are gonna be out at the same time. And then, there's other things to fall back on. You got your hotspots, and campgrounds usually have Wi-Fi. Sometimes they're surprisingly good. Most of the time they're not. But the main reason we're keeping it is so far we've only traveled on the East Coast. So the East Coast, things are a lot more congested. People live a lot closer. There's probably more towers. But after this winter, next spring, March, April-ish, we're gonna head out west, and things might be a little more sporadic with the T-Mobile. Now, I've read reviews, I've watched YouTube videos of people with Starlink out there, and there's no issues. So that's another reason we're keeping it. So as soon as we get out there and we have an issue with the T-Mobile, we can resume our Starlink account and pick up with that. So that's a big reason we are keeping it as well. Also, we plan to visit a ton of national parks out there, which are notorious for not having cell service. So I'm pretty positive the T-Mobile will not work in those. And again, I've watched YouTube videos where the Starlink has no issues connecting in national parks. So that is why we're keeping that. But as for now, the T-Mobile is the way to go where we are right now. But I definitely think it's a good idea to have two sources, whether you go with the Verizon equivalent of the T-Mobile home. And I truly believe Starlink is a must, no matter what else you have. Just because if you got a clear view of the satellite, you're always gonna have internet. So definitely good to have, but at 50 bucks a month, you cannot beat the T-Mobile. Anyways, that's our experiences so far. If you got anything you'd like to add, leave a comment. Appreciate you watching, hope it helped, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.